Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to a special workshop meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. Today is June 19th, it is June 19th, and it is 5 p.m. I'd like to call the workshop meeting to order. We have heard from three councilors who will not be here today. That includes Mayor Pro Tem, Councilor Heisen, and Councilor Wiesner will not be with us today. So we're going to move forward with our agenda, and I welcome you all, and those who are viewing this or will be, welcome. We'll start off with our development services. Item number A is discussion about our park plan. And I see our development services director, Mr. Steve Powers, joining us. I guess, and senior planner Kat Kamak. I guess that we'll go around the table, if you will, to introduce yourselves. I am Mayor Bob Severns.
Joel Servatius, City Council.
Rick Almberg, City Council.
Bill Larson, City Council.
William Milburn, City Administrator.
Kat Kamak, Senior Planner.
Steve Powers, Development Services Director.
Erica Wassinger, City Council.
Thank you very much. So, Kat, are you
Thank
gonna?
you, Mayor, Council. So just wanted to bring the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan to this workshop just to see if the City Council has any comments. I'll just go through and provide a brief summary of what we've done with the document. The Parks Plan in its draft form has been given to the Park Board, Planning Commission, and the City Council. It was in a very draft format. We got a lot of feedback from the Park Board and the Planning Commission. We're incorporating all of those changes, and it's tracking to the July 9th meeting. So we just wanted to put it in front of the City Council and get any feedback if you do have any. So I'll just run through a few slides just to go over what we did with the Parks Plan. So the plan was last updated in 2009, and till about a month ago there was no change in the structure. If you remember, the old plan was kind of a reference style document. When we went through the Planning Commission and the Park Board, we got some comments back on the structure, and so we decided we'll change it back to a traditional format. I think what the City Council got in the last draft was that changed format. So you have a revised format. The content has not changed. It's just been reorganized to the traditional format, and we're still working with adding pictures and things like that to it. So we're developing the document as we go. The goals, policies, and projects were updated. This was done at a joint meeting between the Planning Commission, City Council, and the Park Board. And we updated those goals and statements. The recommended plan has been updated. A lot of new ideas that have, or more, I should say, they're not necessarily new ideas that have become more prevalent in the community. Discussion has been captured in the plan. For example, the need for a new community park in the northwest area of town. There's some conversation about some land acquisition already, so that there's some steps going towards that. So some of those ideas have been already captured in the plan going forward. The level of service analysis has been updated. The methodology did not change, but we just updated all the numbers for the increase in population because a lot of it is connected to the population in terms of service levels, and we've done that. And the 6-year implementation plan has been updated. This is a key thing because we've linked the 6-year implementation plan directly to the CIP. So what the council has seen in the CIP as a 6-year plan is connected to this document. So there's a direct link there. One of the things that wasn't changed as part of this update is the park impact fee. This is something that the council can do outside of the park plan update, and I think the council may want to consider it in light of all other impact fees and things that are being considered in the community, and that may be a packaged conversation other than it being separate in the park plan. So no changes have been done, and the city council can make changes to that at any time without impacting any of the planning process. So what do we have in terms of going forward? Just a brief summary of the recommended plan. The level of service analysis indicated some of the same deficiencies that were in the 2009 plan. Just generally identified some areas within the community that still lack some neighborhood parks. So it's just marked those as opportunity zones, kind of, to anytime there's a chance to pursue something, you can look at the plan and go, okay, this is an area that needs a park, and we can buy land and so on and so forth. So that's continued as a recommendation. And you want to continue as the city grows to acquire more neighborhood parks. Neighborhood parks, the city has a lot of them and serves most of the area. Almost 90% of the city is served by neighborhood parks. It's a great amenity to have in the community, so the recommendation is to continue that trend. Community parks, as indicated, there's going to be a need in the northwest quadrant. This is determined by the level of service analysis that does a spatial as well as a quantity type of analysis. So spatially, we have the northwest area of town that doesn't have a neighborhood, a community park. So people living in that neighborhood are driving to Fort Nugent or Windjammer and making that trip. By providing this amenity closer to them, maybe it'll save some impacts. So spatially, that area has been identified. From a ratio standpoint, which is numbers-based, facilities-based, number of baseball fields, soccer fields, little league, or whatever, those analysis also indicates that there are some deficiencies in our parks. And so if you combine the two, there's a strong indication that we need another community park sometime in the near future. So all of that is captured in the recommended plan. And of course, this is an open space plan too. We want to continue as a city to provide improvements to open space, provide access to them. These are great amenities to the community, lifestyle amenities. Wetlands are great areas, natural areas to have in the community. So the plan identifies the northeast wetlands as a good amenity to look at as you go forward. And of course, the Gary Oak Grove, or the Centennial Grove, which is right on the corner of Fakima Farm and SR 20, that's developing. Fakima Road, what did I say?
Back on the farm.
Oh, sorry.
You can't intercept those.
Good catch
two.
there.
Fakima Road and SR 20. I just recently walked into that property just to take some photos for the plan. There's a good set of saplings that are growing, which can be replanted anywhere in the community, and they're also planting it, giving it a chance to become a grove in the future. So that's something that you want to continue to invest in. And all these are kind of noted in the document because they create opportunities. Anytime you have some kind of a grant funding that you didn't anticipate for, that money became available, you can use the plan to kind of acquire some dollars if necessary for that. And of course, the Friend Marsh, right in the middle of the community, serves a lot of different purposes. You want to try and continue to invest in that as a way for the community to enjoy it. So that's kind of in the recommended plan. Trails also are important amenities that the park plan identifies. You want to develop trails within the city. Some of the opportunities are around that northeast 7th Avenue wetlands. The Whitby Avenue corridor is the core of the city. You have a lot of public facilities, fire stations, schools, so on, located along that stretch. If you can connect them with sidewalks and trails, it'll benefit the community. This is also overlaid with the transportation plan, so these are all kind of consistent with each other. They both say the same thing, so we want to kind of reflect that. And of course, Piney Way and the waterfront area is also a community center. A lot of people on the weekends, we have so many community events are coming to these events. The better access that we provide our citizens, the more opportunities they'll take to not have to drive a vehicle to these events. So these are things contained, and of course, there's a long-term plan that was in the 2009 plan, which is also in the somewhat same in this update as well, and that's trails around the city. This is like a long-term vision to develop trails around the city. We don't have too many trail networks in the city. That's one thing that's lacking. We have a lot of neighborhood parks. it'd be good to connect the parks and the wetlands and the amenities. And so this will take a long time to occur. I think I do have a map of it right there. Here's a waterfront trail, and you can see as development occurs, you start to extend the trail. You find ways to connect through there are some wetlands here, there's Fort Nugent Park. You try and find ways to connect all these amenities around and come down to Regatta, and you can see you can form a loop. And this will take a long time, but it's good to capture this information in the plan so that, for example, when currently we have development proposals here, and if we have it in the plan, we can ask them to include this multi-use trail as part of the development. So instead of getting a 5-foot wide sidewalk that you would normally get with their subdivision, you now get a 10-foot wide sidewalk with a multi-use. So these are things that you just want to have in your plan, so as you expand into the UGA or have opportunity to add land to the city, you can strategically kind of select so that you can kind of make these connections to form this network. So that's kind of the gist of what's in the park plan. Again, we've connected it to the CIP. This is a table that's right out of the CIP document for the parks, and it kind of gives you the timeline of when some of these improvements are planned. So this is all in the document. So other than that, I just wanted to open it up to the City Council. If you've gone through the document, if you have ideas that have not been captured or anything like that, we're still taking feedback and amending the document. So we can bring it to you I have a schedule here, adoption process. We went to the Park Board on June 10th. We talked to them about what's in the plan. They've looked at it at a couple of meetings and have recommended approval. We're currently here at the June 19th meeting. We're going next week to Planning Commission. They'll take a look at the document, provide more input, and then hopefully we'll be at your July 9th meeting for adoption. So, questions? Yes.
So this draft that we have for, I think this is today's packet, 6/10/19 draft.
Yep.
That's the most current, as of today's draft.
We're still working on it, like
Yeah,
putting
we're still
photos and
making
things like
some
that,
little
but
tweaks
that's
in
what's
it.
out in the,
Okay.
yeah, that's out in the public,
And then
yes.
you'll send us, I'm assuming once you keep adding and tweaking it, you'll send us,
Absolutely.
like,
It'll be in
up
your
until
packet.
our
Yep,
July 9th. Okay, so we can read it all before.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Zervadis.
Maybe more of a comment than a question, maybe Kathy, this is one for you too. Scenic Heights, you said as far as neighborhood parks, there's kind of a lack of neighborhood parks in that area. And I know we've got that chunk of land south, mostly south, I guess, of Friend Marsh, that we'd allocated money to study for stormwater solutions in this year. Is there a way to incorporate it? When we think of a park, maybe it's flat grass surfaces with some play equipment, but could a park be a walking parks and trails, more of a park, and satisfy a neighborhood park down in that area somehow in conjunction with stormwater solutions? Are we working towards?
We could look at that. I think the Friend Marsh area being there and the Scenic Heights Trail, that provides an opportunity to, I mean, when we're thinking of neighborhood, we're thinking of, neighborhood, like playground equipment and, picnic bench or something like that the neighborhood can access. So if there's land to accommodate something like that, we can definitely look at that.
I just know a lot of people walk that, whatever it is, 30-some acres, constantly people doing a loop, and I think we mow it, the trail.
Yeah.
And so if that could continue to develop and solve stormwater issues and also serve as a natural park, I think would be great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Oh, Councilor.
I do have just a quick one. There is the PCT, which doesn't relate to us, but then there's also the Pacific Coast Trail.
Is it PNT?
No, give that to me again. The
PNT Pacific
It's the one that goes east and west.
from Glacier National
Glacier
Park
out
to,
here. How are we integrating that? Because Oak Harbor is right in that segment that sends people onto Keystone Ferry and to the peninsula. Are we integrating that park plan that identifies part of
We haven't identified regional trails that go through our city, primarily because there's no, so I know the trail you're talking about, and a few years ago, we looked at, let me backtrack a little bit. So when 9/11 happened, they closed the seaplane base gate. At that time, I think the SPNT trail came down through Regatta, went through the seaplane base, came out through Mailer, connected to the waterfront, and then went out. So when they closed the gate here, there's some association that kind of manages the maps for these trails, contacted Island County and asked, hey, the gate is closed. If you are to reroute it, where would you reroute it? And they rerouted it to Otfield and went out to the West Beach Road and then further down. So a few years ago, I got in touch with them and said, you can reroute that trail through Regatta and come down to the waterfront trail. You don't have to go through the seaplane base. And they were like, oh, okay, that's great. And there was a representative that was supposed to come out and meet with me in order to incorporate this change. And we've had several conversations since, and that person has not come down, and I actually haven't seen the change take place on their online maps. But conversations said with the person, and I can bring emails, they want to get it back to Windjammer. That's their idea, is to put it through the town. So what we are going to do, long story short, when we do the VFW park improvements, we're going to have a kiosk there similar to what the Scenic Heights Trail had. And that's going to try and connect with maps and things like that to those regional networks with a map showing that you can come through here. So, but we'll continue to work with that national organization. They're not a paid organization. I don't know who's that entity. It's like the Friends of a Trail kind of a thing. They are not motivated to necessarily manage the website really well. So, but we're working with them on that. But we're consistent with Island County's trails plans that they've adopted recently, and they have some regional connections in their trails plan. So we are kind of connected in that way to Island County, and Island County is connected to the region.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Kathy. And I think we'll have our next item is discussion of the Transportation Benefit District topics, material change policy, ballot measure, project list, continued from May workshop. And we've got our city engineer, Jim Bridges, and our senior planner, Dennis Lefebvre, with us now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll kick this meeting off, but I think majority of the discussion will be on our project list, which Jim Bridges will present in just a minute. Part of your packet includes the two resolutions which we reviewed at the last workshop. A refined project list, which I mentioned Jim will walk us through, and also a fact sheet which Blaine and his staff put together, which will be a good sample for an educational tool as we move forward with the sales tax initiative. And Blaine, you can certainly mention any additional comments on that as we go along in our discussion here. But the two resolutions that I will address briefly, we talked about. One is a standard resolution that establishes a material change policy for the TBD. It's a requirement in the RCW. It essentially creates a policy where if a project breaks a threshold of excess cost, or the scope of the project increases by a certain amount, or the timeline increases by an X amount, it gives the city council some policy direction on how to address those extensions. Like I said, that's a requirement of the RCW. We used several other samples from MRSC to create this material change policy for us. It's a pretty standard operating procedure, but we all need to have one for the TBDs. We are looking at bringing this forward to your July 9th meeting for approval, and that'll be a done deal for that. Are there any questions on that resolution? No. Moving on to the second resolution that we have, of course, it's probably the biggie one, is the one that sets in motion the initiative to set on the ballot for November 5th, the 0.2% sales tax initiative. As we looked at this at the last workshop, Public Works presented the initial draft of the project list, which was pretty extensive at the time. There was some direction from you folks to refine that project list as much as possible. Again, the two sources that we're using for the project list are the 6-year capital improvement program, but probably the bigger document is the Street Saver Management Plan, which is basically how do we maintain what we already have in place. So we are working through the refinement of that project list. There was discussion on whether we would want to place the entire project list in the ballot measure or just refer to those two documents that I just mentioned. And it seemed to me that there was some direction to maybe look at inclusion into the ballot issue, the resolution of the entire list. So that's a point of discussion, I think, after we hear Jim's presentation on the refined project list. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thank you. So I put together a presentation for your review tonight of what the Transportation Benefit District entails. Kind of tell the story. So currently the City of Oak Harbor has 71 centerline miles of roadway. And there are 4 types of roadway in the city: in the arterials, minor arterials, collectors, and residential streets. The city does not maintain any portion of SR 20, nor does it maintain any Island County roads that abut city limits. So it's going to get kind of confusing when we talk centerline miles and we talk lane miles. We'll get to that definition here in just a minute. But of that roadway network, that equals 148 lane miles of roadway within the city. 1.5 miles of those are arterial, 24.5 miles are minor arterials, 19 miles are collectors, and 103 miles are local residential streets. And that's pretty typical across the United States as far as percentage of roadways. So here's the definition. A centerline mile is the total length of the roadway following the center line of the road. A lane mile is the total length of the roadway divided by the number of lanes of that road. So if you have a 4-lane road, it's a mile long, you have 4 lane miles. So that's how we get there. An arterial is the highest traffic volume corridor. It serves the major centers of the activity of an urban center, of an urban area, and they're designed to carry a high proportion of the urban travel, the minimum number of miles. So that's why there's only 1.5 miles in the city. And our only arterial is that portion of Swantown from SR 20 to Heller. A minor arterial interconnects and augments the urban arterial system, providing service of trips of moderate length at a somewhat lower level of travel mobility, designed to distribute travel to geographic areas smaller than those identified within the arterial system. So you start breaking it down, right? The arterials, the main road, minor arterials feed that, and collectors, and so on and so forth. Collectors provide property access and traffic circulation within residential neighborhoods, commercial, industrial areas. Collect traffic from the local streets in residential neighborhoods and channels it into the arterial system. And the local or residential road is primarily to provide direct access to abutting land and access to higher order systems. Offers the lowest level of mobility. Service to through traffic movement is usually discouraged. So that's why you don't want people cutting through your neighborhoods to jump streets to get over to the faster traffic. That's where we get into our traffic calming. So in summary, arterials, minor arterials, and collectors are the primary routes of traffic that allow residential street traffic and rural roadways to access businesses, schools, and state highways. Arterials, minor arterials, and collectors are larger roads with more lanes and are designed to accommodate higher volumes of traffic. Residential streets are narrower and designed to only accommodate the neighborhood volume of traffic. And there you see the kind of the flow, residential to the collector, to the minor arterial, and out to the arterial. And finally, approximately 70% of our lane miles in the city of Oak Harbor are local and residential roads. So here's a picture of Swantown. This is a major arterial. Midway is a minor arterial. Laurelland Lane is a collector. And this is just an example of a local residential. This is Northwest Columbia Drive as a residential street. So the question is, how are our roads developed? So arterials, minor arterials, and collectors are planned and developed by the city as primary routes of traffic that allow residential street traffic to access business, schools, and state highways. So it's our job to plan those, lay those out. As traffic volumes increase through a corridor, we start looking at that corridor. You know, is it got enough traffic volume that we need to start expanding that level of service into a different classification of roadway where, you know, it may require, you know, buying additional right-of-way, so we can start widening that road out so to accommodate future growth as growth continues along in that direction. Residential roads are planned and constructed by developers. Excuse me. And some of these roads were developed in the county and they were later annexed into the city. So depending on when the development project was built, some roads may not have been built to any design standard. That's why we see roads with thin asphalts, less gravel base, poor drainage characteristics. There was no inspection. This is how they kept their costs down. Even after all that, after the development, the road was granted to the city. And it's now our financial responsibility for the repair and maintenance of that road forever and ever. So how do we pay for our maintenance? Arterials, minor arterials, and collectors are eligible to receive state and federal grant funding to rebuild or to improve them. Residential streets are not eligible for state and federal funding and may rely on a portion of general city taxes, state gas taxes, and specialty taxes as approved by the local public. Again, federal funds cannot go to any improvement on a residential road. So we look at the general fund and how it allocates tax revenues to the following city divisions. These are the city divisions that the general fund currently expenses to. And you don't really see the street division in there. And the very last note there is very little general fund money has been allocated to street maintenance over the past 20 plus years. This is some where the money goes to. Parks, you see a little bit of maintenance, police department, the fire department, building department, and the senior center. So those are where some of your general funds go to. They do, you know, very little will go to the street, if any. So what about gas taxes? Everybody says, well, I pay my gas taxes. And I think we all feel like the guy in the picture below there. So Washington State proportions out the gas tax, or the motor vehicle fuel tax, the MVFT, to every city in the county. After, of course, Washington State keeps their share for state transportation funding. The state collects 49.4 cents per gallon of tax, and of that, only 2.96 cents is divvied up amongst every city and county in the state. It's a proportional distribution, so the bigger the city, the higher, the more gas they sell in that city, the more money they're going to receive, and likewise with county. Additionally, Oak Harbor receives CAPRON funds from the refund of vehicle license fees and taxes. Those would be some gas taxes due to the lack of state transportation facilities on Island County. So the motor vehicle fuel tax, also known as the gas tax, is the single largest state shared revenue source for cities and towns. Revenues are distributed to all cities and towns and counties as a percentage of actual state fuel tax revenues received.
So if someone fills up their tank in Mount Vernon or at the casino, does any of that come back here, or does it go to where the gas is sold?
We get a small portion back in the CAPRON funds, only because we're only Island County and one other, San Juan County receive those CAPRON funds because of our lack of access to state transportation facilities.
Okay.
And I'll get to that here.
That's different than 2.96
Yes,
cents?
that's a separate pot of money. So here's the CAPRON funds, and this is Island County's distribution. So the state refunds half of the vehicle license fees, and the first 11.5 cents of motor vehicle fuel tax, directly or indirectly paid to its residents, minus the state's administrative costs. So the remaining revenue is then distributed to the county treasurer and split between the county and the cities based on the proportional assessed valuation. So that's where we get an additional piece of that 11.5 cents a gallon. Since CAPRA funds are paid from state motor vehicle fund, they must be placed in the city street fund and used for the same purposes as the motor vehicle fuel tax. The revenues must be placed in a designated street fund and used for the following highway or street purposes: salaries and wages of street personnel, material, supplies, and equipment, purchase or condemnation of right-of-way, engineering purposes, or any other proper highway or street purpose in connection with the construction, alteration, repair, improvement, or maintenance of any street, city street, or bridge, or viaduct, or underpassage along, upon, or across such streets. It can be used for planning and accommodation and establishment of maintenance of pedestrian, equestrian, and bicycle trails within any existing highway right-of-way or served by the highway. Those funds make up the bulk of funding available for Oak Harbor Street Department. They're used to pay for repairs and maintenance of all city roads, sidewalks, materials, equipment, snow and ice removal, street lights, traffic signals, wages and benefits to staff, and pro rata share of all city facility expenses that are, the street department has to help it pay for. So here's some of our work we do. There's the snow and ice removal, and there's the crew, there's street lights, signs, and traffic signals and striping, just some of the work that money goes to pay for. So what will the TBD do? The city will be able to collect a sales tax, if it's adopted that way, that will provide a dedicated source of funds for repairs and maintenance of the city street. How do we know? So the question is, how do we know the city won't use these new taxes to fund other departments? By law, any funds collected by the implementation of a TBD can only be used to fund road, transportation, bicycle, pedestrian, are included in that related work or projects. Rick?
I'm saving up my questions.
So what roads will the city repair? By ordinance, the city will only use these funds to repair and maintain residential streets. So we're not going to use them on our major arterials or our minor arterials or our collectors. Can the city also build new sidewalks with these funds? Yes. Initially, the city's plan is to repair these streets to prevent them from further deterioration. In the first 7 years of the plan will accomplish the repairs. Starting year 8, the city shifts from repairs into preventive maintenance. And that will free up, it's a less cost, so it frees up funding that can go to those bicycle ways and pathways and trails. So do we have a plan? So in 2018, the city contracted with Pavement Services to prepare a pavement-wide condition index survey. That's the PCI. The goal was to inventory the pavement conditions by street segments and develop a cost-effective plan to improve city streets. Pavement Services presented that report, draft report to City Council on July 25th of last year at a council workshop, which identified the need to develop and implement a strategy to maintain and repair city streets. Go backwards. There we go. So this is our standard, the PCI, ASTM Standard Pavement Condition Index. And you'll see the ranges, 86 to 100, good, minor, routine maintenance only necessary, satisfactory, again, minor deterioration, less stress, only routine maintenance, fair. We start to get into a little bit more work that needs to be done. Pavement has a combination of generally low or medium severity distresses, near-term maintenance and repairs may range from routine to major, and then we get into poor, very poor, serious, and failed. Basically, everything from poor down is a major project. So this is what you'd look at and you'd say this is a satisfactory pavement rating. And I want to go back. Satisfactory pavement has scattered low severity distresses that should require only routine maintenance. And you can see a little bit of crack filling in the laneway. It's not major. That road's holding up pretty well. So this is actually rated fair. I'll go back to the PCI again. So fair has a combination of generally low and medium severity distresses. Near-term maintenance and repairs may range from routine to major. So on this street, we'd actually look at it, and a good time to really look at it is if it's raining and it's puddling, and see if those puddles are laying where you see the severe cracks on the outside edge, and see if that's a detriment, or it can be repaired with a chip seal, or does it need a major repair. And so then we get into pour, and we can see it failing. You can see that this alligator cracking here. It does no good to do any crack filling. That needs to be dug out and repaired. You see the puddling and the other failures to the top of the picture. So that section would be a major repair. And this just shows you where our streets are located, and the average PCI. And you can see our average PCI is not bad when you combine it. And the way the program was set up, they took segments. So instead of saying we're going to take a street from intersection to intersection and call that a segment, they went a certain distance, and every distance they rated that distance. So if it was 50 feet, they looked at that 50-foot section, and it might have been poor. And if I go back to this road here, you can see beyond that, it looks pretty decent up at the top of the picture. But in this location, this segment was rated poor. Now, we're not going to go in and do a bunch of skip repairs. That's kind of hard to do. So we would take the entire length of this particular road here, come up with an average PCI across that length, and say it needs to be major repair or chip seal. That's how it would function.
Can you hold that, go back to that, excuse me, Mayor?
No, go ahead.
You go back to that photo. I just want to ask you a question that's tied to this. You see the vehicles parked on the shoulders there. There's no thickened edge. I would presume there's a thickened edge. There's certainly no curb or curb cut sidewalk. That also deteriorates the road. If we do pass successful getting the TDT tax, will we use those funds specifically for those types of improvements? So we're just not doing overlays on already bad surfaces and edge of road surfaces.
So to answer your question real quick, because you're kind of jumping ahead of where I'm not going to be in my
Okay.
presentation,
All
but I'm
right.
going to answer your question real quick. So in this particular case, if this was just going to be an overlay, we wouldn't do an overlay here on this spot here, because you're throwing good money away for
Right.
that. But if you look at the top of the picture where the street conditions seem to be better, if the whole road looked at, we would do what's called a thin overlay there. That wouldn't include the curb and gutter. That happens on a major repair. So where we have to dig out, because once we start digging out, then we trigger stormwater improvements.
Right.
And that's where we got to start building conveyance systems, pipes and curbs and gutters. But on a thin overlay, we're not proposing any new curbs and gutters or sidewalks. So. I got double slides here for some reason. So we get into pavement treatment, preservation, and maintenance options. So here's where we kind of get into the dollars and cents. So the city will be looking at 3 different pavement options, treatment options to restore the roadway surfaces. And they're bulleted with dollar signs. So chip seal, $1 signs, fairly cheap. A thin asphalt overlay, a little more expensive. And a reconstruction, that's where you get into the big dollars. And additionally, while this is going on, we still have to do crack filling, we still have to do pothole repairs until we get to those streets that are on our project list. So chip sealing. All streets that have a current PCI rating of 71 and above will be scheduled to receive a chip seal and extends the life of the pavement. So let me back up here to a 71 and above, that's satisfactory. Low severity distresses that require only routine maintenance. So the streets are in good shape, we want to keep them in good shape. Chip seal is the cheapest way to do that. So what's a chip seal? It's to keep the water from penetrating the road surface, on the road structure on the paved surfaces, fills and seals the cracks and raveled surface of old pavement, provides an anti-glare surface during wet weather and an increased reflective surface for night driving. It seals the pavement surface, minimizing the the effects of aging. Provides a high skid resistant. Again, it's gravel that's kind of sticking up out of the tar a little bit, and it provides that skid resistance, especially on wet pavement. And the cost of a chip seal is generally 15 to 20% less than the cost of a pavement overlay. So we go to the chip seal process. It's a emulsified asphalt and water mixture is applied to the road using a special spray truck. As soon as the liquid meets the road surface, the water in the asphalt material starts to evaporate. We call it breaking in the vernacular of our line of work. Immediately after that, the asphalt sprayed, we start putting chips down. So it's hot, it's coming out of the truck hot, it's sprayed down, we start putting chips on it. And once we get the chips down, then we start rolling it with rubber tire rollers. And even that, you have to go over it multiple times to get that rock to embed into that emulsion. It can require for 2 days to cure properly because of the temperature. That's why it's limited to June through August in the state to make sure it cures properly. Typically, you open them up by the end of the day. You want to get that rubber tire traffic on there because that will continue to help seek that material. And then after a few days, you sweep the loose gravel off. And that loose gravel can be recollected and can be used for other purposes, for park trails, things of this nature. So it's not just thrown away. So here you see it. So there's the distributor truck. He's spraying the material down. Coming in behind it, there's the chip machine. It drops the chips over the top of it. And then there's the rubber tire roller. And so here's a picture, the bottom left corner, or the bottom right corner, excuse me. That is on the left side of it. That is a chip sealed road that is ready to drive on. On the right side there, it is a chip sealed road that has what's called a fog seal on it. And a fog seal is an extra layer of emulsion that gives you a little bit more life extension. So it's not the same thickness as what went down the street, but it just seals it. Seals that rock, helps that rock stay in place longer, gives you about 1 year to 2 years more out of your useful life of a chip sealed road. So then we look at thin asphalt overlays. And these are streets that have a rating between 56 and 70, and they're rescheduled to receive a thin asphalt overlay that would extend the life of the pavement by 7 to 10 years. Thin overlays maintain your grades. They can use on higher traffic roadways to restore the smooth road. Now, pavement, we all know, is nice and smooth when it comes out of the machine. It's rolled down smooth. Again, the chip seal is going to give you that gravelly surface feel until it wears down. It also improves the condition of the pavement and addresses moderate forms of distress. Thin overlay involves placing a thin layer of asphalt mix on an existing pavement. The thickness is typically about 1.5 inches, can be less. Thin overlays are widely used as a technique for pavement preservation or rehabilitation. They are sometimes referred to as a non-structural overlay, which indicates the purpose of it is simply to restore the pavement and not to add structural strength. The structure of the road is actually the rock basement below it. So here, so in an overlay, you can overlay straight on top of the existing pavement, or as you see in some of our roads, they might look in good conditions, but they have some undulation through them. And you might want to come in there, you might want to mill that down, take some of those humps and bumps out. And that's so that's an option that would add to the cost of an overlay. It's a minimal cost, but it does add to the cost. You see that's in the top corner there, optional overlay, where the picture next to it, they're just coming on and they're ready to start paving. Then on the bottom corner, you see how they groove the pavement. That's that on the one section there. That is the grooving is from the milling. It's pilling it up, it's grooving it, and then you see the overlay next to it, and then you see the finished product. You see there's no curves, gutters. It's just laid right on top of the pavement. Then we get into reconstruction. Reconstruction is necessary when the pavement is deteriorated, no longer has any structural capacity. The pavement is severely cracked, has allowed water to infiltrate and degrade the aggregate base, and the infiltration into the base material has caused the asphalt to crack and crumble. And all streets that have a current PCI rating between 0 and 56 will need to have major reconstruction. Fortunately, we don't have much of those. The reconstruction is the most costly of the pavement preservation options. The entire roadway and roadbed needs to be removed and replaced. This also triggers stormwater improvements per state regulation. So I'd give a little cost example there, a 25-foot wide roadway, again we're talking residential, 100 feet long, 3 inches of asphalt, 9 inches of rock, 100 foot of a storm drain system, which includes one catch basin, 100 feet of pipe. So you've got a daisy chain these catch basins. They can't just stand alone. About 278 square yards of material, so we can get into an apples and apples comparison. A chip seal is about $4 a square yard. For that same 100-foot long road, 25-foot wide, is $1,100. If we did a thin overlay asphalt, which is an 1.5 inch asphalt pavement on that same 278 square yards, you're looking at $11 a square yard. You're looking about $3,000. If we did a 3-inch overlay, just for comparison purposes, $33 a yard, $8,900. And if we get into reconstruction, now we're full blown. That's $19,490. And here's, this is what we don't like to see, right? Road construction. We don't like the phone calls. We interrupt people's lives. They got to make detours. We got to have traffic flaggers out there making sure they can get around to get to their homes, make sure emergency vehicles get through, and it's a mess. And it's a mess for a long time. So we look at the goal of the pavement management system. The primary goal of the implementing system is to maintain the city street system at its lowest life cycle cost and to prevent costly deterioration. If you look at that curve, you look at the PCI ratings on the left, good, satisfactory, fair, that's where you get into the lower cost. So and the curve line is the age line. As that starts to age out, you start to see it start to drop off, and it starts off to drop off pretty dramatically. So you want to stay in that 75% or above life cycle of the road, pavement condition of the road. You start getting below that, you get into the higher cost options. This is an older slide, and where it says $1 for repairs here and $4 for repairs here. That's not true. We just looked at the numbers. So the timing and selection of the pavement maintenance and repair is important to ensure that work is done at the lowest life cycle cost. If preventive maintenance is performed before the critical PCI is reached, the condition can be maintained at a high state during the leveling off period. Any major rehabilitation, such as hot mix, asphalt overlay, that is done before a pavement deteriorates below is usually cost substantially less than would be required. And many agencies utilize the power of pavement management systems to systematically schedule maintenance and repairs based on short and long-term network level goals and priorities to keep their dollars at the lowest dollars spent at the lowest life cycle cost. So how did we get here? The City Council approved Ordinance 1835 on May 15th of 2018, which created the Transportation Benefit District, which allows the city to collect and expend funds exclusively for street repairs and maintenance. The next step would be approval of Resolution 1916 to place on a ballot measure to increase the local sales tax to collect revenue for the TBD. If a new sales tax increase of 2% is adopted in the public by the public in November, it will generate approximately $9 million over the next 10 years and will repair over 100 lane miles of local residential streets at a projected cost. Now remember, we only have 103, so in 10 years it would repair over 100. And this is how you see that curve starts to slide down 7 years, jumps back up because you've done some maintenance, jumps back up, keep extending that life payment, so you're only looking at that top 7 years all the time, and you don't get down into that minimal range. So we talked a little bit about the projects, and this would be the project list that's included. It's several pages, has all 100 miles of the road network on there. And then we played around with developing a map. We only went out 5 years on this map, but all those streets that are highlighted in there that are thick and colored in the first 5 years in this scenario are what's going to be treated. We would certainly develop a map for the full 10 years for the ballot measure. I think that kind of gives the picture, people can see where they're at. So, and it gives the year, so the red is 2019, which we're not going to make, or is it 2020? I can't see that far. 2020, 2021. So the longer we wait, we just keep pushing that out. The longer we wait, again, keep in mind, when we did this analysis, the city did this analysis, it's been on almost 2 years now. So pavements have deteriorated even further. So even though they might have had a condition rating of a 72, which only required a chip seal, we get down to 71 or 69, 68. Now they require an overlay, so the price keeps going up. There's the old Fram Oil commercial, you pay me now, you pay me later. So, any questions?
Councilman Lumber.
Thank you, Mayor. Traditionally, our CAPRON funds have gone right into public works for road maintenance, but not for really any projects. Okay, if we didn't have the CAPRON funds, we'd really be in a hole.
Right.
That's the way I understand it.
Right. I looked briefly at our budget over the last 10 years, and we're averaging somewhere between $700,000 to $800,000 in CAPRON funds.
So when we submit this to the public on a ballot, is there going to be a statement in there that said this is for road maintenance that goes to a schedule where people will physically see improvements, not just sealing cracks,
Correct.
but actually doing
Yes.
overlays where necessary?
Yes.
And then the other thing too is I understand balancing this budget with chip seal and overlays versus reconstruction. Some of the roads, many of the roads that I've driven on in this city over the last 40-some years, many of them were just gravel roads before they did pretty much a thin overlay on them. So we really don't have a good road base on a lot of them. We don't have good stormwater control, and therein lies, as you know, part of the problem for deterioration of a lot of the road systems too. Are we better off targeting the streets that have the heaviest traffic that would require the most work to give us the most longevity out of this thing? I mean, there's a point where we keep kicking the can down the road doing it cheap, or we do it so that this road segment is going to last for many years.
Well,
And we're not like washing windows in a
Right.
high-rise building where we just finish one side and you're going around to the other.
no, and that's a great question, because, you know, you think about that, you know, I've got these roads that are falling apart, I need to get, they've got a lot of traffic on them, I gotta get in and rebuild them, right? But if I take $20,000 to do 100 feet of road, I can do 2,000 feet of road with chip seal.
Yeah.
So it's just the opposite way to think. You want to take your really good pavements and start a preservation program now, so
Okay.
they don't end up like your bad roads.
Okay.
Your bad roads are going to get worked on during the same time, right? Because again, in our city, our PCI is not that bad. We have very few of those bad roads that need to be rebuilt. All due respect to, you know, our history of, you know, we've got roads out here that were built on gravel, but those roads are going to, every year, there are going to be a certain portion of them that are going to be reconstructed. Every year, we're going to have a greater portion of them that are going to be preserved with the chip seal.
And then at what point do we really focus on doing curbs, gutters, and sidewalks? I mean, when you go to that route, now you have to put in a stormwater system.
Right. So again, anytime you peel that asphalt off and you start getting into the gravel, you're required by state law to do the stormwater disposal.
Stormwater.
Right.
What I'm listening to right now is I don't hear us doing that. No sidewalks, curbs, stormwater.
No. Right now, we've only analyzed if we went in and expended those dollars on chip seal, thin overlay, or major reconstruction. Major reconstruction, you would get into curb and gutter, and you possibly get into sidewalks. One other thing that you could do with this source of revenue is you could set aside a fund every year, part of that, to identify to be used as LID money, which is local improvement district money. So folks that want those amenities, you know, their neighborhood was annexed in on a county road, you know, it doesn't have curb, gutter, and sidewalk, but they want the urban amenity, and there's several neighbors in the street that want that. They approach the city and say, hey, we want to get together, we want to form an LID, and an LID shares the cost between the city and the homeowner and the neighborhood. And so if you take that same 100 feet of road, and then let's say the lots are 50 feet wide, you got 4 neighbors, 1 on each side, or 2 on each side. That 100 feet would be, the city would pay for the engineering, they pay for typically the engineering, the construction management, and a portion of the construction, but the larger portion actually is paid by the homeowner, all all right? And so it's divided amongst a number of homeowners along that street, and there's various formulas. You can do it by frontage, you can do it by parcel, and so that's how you stretch those dollars. You can take $100,000 and turn it to $1 million if the neighborhood's big enough and wants to add those amenities. So that option is available to use TDD funds that you can set aside for LID funds to stretch those dollars out if you'd like to. And many cities are doing that, and many cities are successful doing that.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a quick question on the slide where you showed the cost, especially for the chip seal. So at that $4 a square yard, so if you showed it the two ways, so I'm assuming that $4 a square yard is without that last layer on top. What are we looking at approximately for an additional cost if we were going to say, okay, we're going to do this chip seal. We've got a lot of road that is going to need this. It adds some life and it adds a layer of,
Right.
as far as aesthetically.
Right. And, well, actually, that $4 square includes that.
Oh, it does include
Yeah.
that? Okay. Great.
Yeah, typically, you're looking at about $2.50 to $3 a square yard just for the chip seal,
Mhm.
and I added the $1 in there for the fog seal. So,
Okay, thanks.
and the fog seal actually turns the road black again, so it looks like it's brand new asphalt. So, kind of gives that appearance to the public. Hey, I've got a brand new street in front of my house, but it has a function of preserving life.
Councilor Spadia.
Thank you both, Dennis. I think this is some of your brainchild, and I really, really appreciate the work you guys have done. I hope we move forward and take this to the voters. I think the more information we can give them, the better. One of the if we have some kind of an FAQ page, it's already happened on Facebook when it was in the Woodview Times, if you read that, was the gas tax. So everyone already assumes out of that 50-ish cents they're paying that all comes back locally, and as we see, very little of it does. Looking at the schedule, I was curious, because I looked at my street. I'm scheduled for, it says for treatment, but this page is in here, doesn't really break down whether it's chip seal, because it's a schedule for treatment in 2023, 25, and 28.
Okay.
There must be a more detailed,
Oh, yeah.
something behind this, hey, chip seal. I mean, will we provide that to the public, or will it be more of a graphic that would say, this is your street? And then they can click on something and see, hey, in 2021, I'm getting chip seal, or I'm getting full-blown reconstruction.
Okay, so we've kind of had that internal talk. How do we present that so that the homeowner can dive in? And do we want to put a link on our website to that document that says, hey, I live on Whidbey, here I am, there it is, and this is what I'm going to get. So I'm going to get the overlay, I'm going to get the chip seal, I'm going to get the new pavement. So.
I think it'd be good if we can come up with something that's not too complex, but most folks click on and understand, hey, this is what I can anticipate work. And obviously, if we stick to that schedule and build that trust, that's imperative. But then we'll do some kind of, I know I've talked to Mr. Oborn about doing a comparison between, hey, here's what car tabs would cost the average family. Here's what the 0.2% would cost the average family. And I hope it would probably come out more affordable and share the cost better with the 0.2. Thank you.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. In that vein, I wanted to commend you on the fact sheet because it does break that down quite simply in real dollars and cents, and it's a very basic document. It's short. It's one page, but it gives everybody a lot of information as far as what is this for, what are we going to do with it, and what is it going to cost, and what is the alternative? And the alternative is, if we don't pass this, it goes to car tabs, and that costs the average homeowner, resident who is paying for car tabs the same amount or more than it would with the sales tax. So the only question I had is, have you come up with a priority project list yet? Because those are still blank.
Oh, yes. So this is the priority project list, and this kind of ties in with the other question, is if I was to show the actual list that shows what was going to happen, that's 115 pages, which is going to be too big to put on a ballot or even put in the voter information pamphlet. So it'd be a pamphlet all its own. So yes, this is the document here. Again, this is broken out by years. This is 2020, so there should be 10 pages here because it's a 10-year document.
So I guess my question is, how much of that is going in the voters pamphlet, or do we not know that yet?
I don't think we answered that yet. I think we should look at, in my opinion, the graphic, the map, where people can see that street, and then here's a link, take you to the city website where you can drill down and see your street exactly. Again, it's just too much information because it's 100 miles of roadway that we're looking at improving over 10 years. So it would just be too much, and you'd get lost in it.
Mr. Carter.
Last month when we talked about this, Dennis, I think, gave some examples. He had looked at some ballot resolutions from other communities. Some didn't include any sort of project list and just referenced you out to some other source of information. Some included the project list, and they might have had 50 street segments listed in there. So there's no one way to do it. And as Jim said, we've been batting this back and forth on staff, which is what's the best way to convey a volume of information in a useful fashion. And even the boiled down list is 10 pages long, and so I think staff is leaning more towards not trying to shove a bunch of stuff into the resolution, because we doubt that will be usable, and that we'd be better off setting up good outside places for that information to be stored and directing the public and the voters to that. But obviously we want council's input.
But I think in the name of transparency, we can give different levels, more summary level, and for different people and different users. People want to drill down and go on the web and look at our 103-page document. I mean, it's all transparent.
Yeah.
We can let them do it. But I think for referendum and for most people, I have a short attention span. And
Right.
so we want to do as summary as possible. And that's where this first kind of go around of our sample here of the fact sheet was just trying to get the key area. And the key area that really happened is we pretty much over time with inflation lost our funding. The general fund stopped doing it because the pie kept on getting smaller, and other departments gathered it up. So at some point the council elected to stop using general fund money, and now it's kind of dried up. So we're playing a little bit of deferred maintenance here. This 10-year plan would put us in a good shape after 10 years of getting those constructions and getting most of the streets into the 7-year rotation with a chip seal, which is a lot better shape to be in. And then we could look at sidewalks and LID and those other things later on. Or you could, I can go into alternatives if you want to, but I do have some ideas on that.
Councilor Wiseman.
Yes, thank you. I too appreciate a simple fact sheet, just right off the bat for our voters, especially like Councilmember Cervetti said, when people are reading an article and it doesn't have all of the facts that we do. My only suggestion for the fact sheet would be, I just looked at it kind of briefly, that maybe it's not so wordy. I think that people don't read paragraphs. I think they like bullet points, and especially with numbers, if you're just gonna say like, this is what it's gonna cost you, like, don't put an explanation, just bullet points. I think maybe if it's too wordy or too many paragraphs, I don't think people will take the time to read all of it and understand it. But if it's something that's like real simple bullet points, especially when you're dealing, like I said, with numbers, with facts, this is what it costs you this way versus this way, and highlight, this is the way we're doing it. It might just make it a little quicker and a little more easier for people to quickly pick up on, say, hey, we're doing 100 miles of local residential streets only. This is what you're getting, bullet, simple. And then, like you said, put your links. Because I know my dad, being one of them, will go in and read the 150 pages of the plan. I know there are people that will do that, right? I don't know. my mom would not, but my dad would. So I think having the link, like you said, so that the people can dive down that really want to read all of the paragraphs, but I would like the fact sheet to just be really like bold bullet points, as little paragraphs being explanations, wordy sentences as possible, just so that people can quickly see. And say, everybody is misunderstanding about the gas tax. I feel like most of the comments were people saying, why am I gonna pay more when I'm already paying, this much gas tax? And maybe it's something, a really bolded bullet point explanation of, this is not that, this is what we get from that. I don't know, I'm not an expert on how you explain that in a great way, but I do like the fact sheet, and I'm excited to get a hold of one of those so that I can share it and so that I can even have a very basic understanding to share with people how important it is. So thank you guys for all the work. Appreciate it.
Councilor Survey.
Thank you. Just wanted to dovetail on that, Lisa and everyone. I appreciate everyone's work on this, but this might be a time to hire a professional graphic design firm.
Yeah,
So
not-
there'll be a couple of different versions of this. Will go out a flyer or some kind of mailer, a postcard. So several iterations, a digital version. So if we need to find some funding for that, just so that it gets the message out there succinctly and clearly.
I concur.
So we've had one counselor talk about alternatives. I don't know, in the interest of time, I don't know whether, you had mentioned that you could speak to alternatives?
I
What-
could, it's up to you.
I mean, what kind of, I assume one alternative is to not do.
I'll go into it as quick as I can and kind of have, format, so, and we'll bring up my slides here and I'll just kind of go, I don't think it's too wordy, but I appreciate the detail. So basically, just to recap what Jim talked about, the current proposal, it's a 0.2% tax, about $967,000 annually over a 10-year period. And one of the things I gleaned out of there is by the time we get kind of caught up with our roads that are deteriorating with the reconstruction, we might have some money available for alternative sidewalks, bike lanes, and trails. I know we at least had a former city engineer that came to council meeting and mentioned taking a percentage of it and putting it towards roads. And we could do the LID matching program too. The first of all alternatives, one of the ones that a council member brought up was just splitting it in half and doing the half amount, 483, 350. I think Jim did a good job of, if you kind of do this, you're probably not going to be catching up with the roads that need reconstruction. So you're still going to have some decay going on and losing roads. And then you won't really, obviously we're not going to have any money for alternatives, sidewalk, bike lanes, or trails. So alternative B would kind of be the approach you're talking now, but we would come up with some percentage split. I don't really have the analysis to do that because we haven't really, when I talk to staff, we haven't really done any analysis of what we want to spend in sidewalks, bike lanes, and trails as an alternative. And I think it might have some resonate with the property owners. People like to see things, and so if they saw sidewalks that went in your area, there might be some benefit, and that might resonate a little bit more. I think we could probably squeeze that in. It'll be a tight squeeze to make sure we maintain enough without having the decay. Alternative C is, you guys talked about that, but I just wanted to put all the alternatives in there. Was the $20 vehicle registration thing that you talked about, not near as much money. And then alternative D, if we felt we weren't ready yet and wanted to get some more input, we can garner public support and postpone any action, because it's a real big deal to do this ballot measure. And you talked about spending money for educational purposes. And then my last slide just kind of wraps it up in a quick little summary here of just the alternatives, and I also gave it to you in a sheet here. Things that certainly we'll get our best shot if you want to go towards the 2%, but I just, in talking to people, and I wanted to throw out some alternatives too, because we did have, as one council member mentioned, why don't you split it in half? And then we did have, like I said, somebody attend our council meeting that mentioned, why don't you partition some of it off towards bikes, lanes, and trails. And that method, I kind of figured we come up with a percentage, maybe 30, 25% or something. We put it in to a fund for sidewalks and those kind of areas, and retool the plan accordingly. But we haven't done the analysis to kind of figure out what an optimal amount would be.
Other things to think about, I guess. We've had some requests to think about alternatives.
I guess from council point of view, I mean, from staff point of view, is there a really strong desire to go with the current proposal, or do we want to look at other things? So that's, I don't mean to throw it on here, but this is a big deal to go to a referendum, so.
Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think alternative D isn't really an alternative at this point. You know, we've been talking about this since May of last year. This road study was done over 2 years ago. The deterioration on the roads increases, the cost to fix the roads also increases. So that's a disparity that is going to continue to grow. I think it's our job to look at the future of this city and how we're going to maintain it. And I liked your analogy, Councilman Omberg, about the skyscraper, where you have to continue to wash the windows. And we have to do that with these roads. This isn't going. We don't fix the roads and sit back and say, all right, the roads are fixed. It's a process. We have a plan. It's a long-term plan to get these roads where they need to be, to maintain them for the long term, and then, if possible, make these improvements that will build and will pay back into our community. But for me, right now, we are already behind. We're lagging, and this helps us get to a point where we get ahead of the problem instead of reacting. We have to be visionaries, not reactionaries. And I would like to see us move forward with the plan for the 2% or the 0.2% sales tax.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I feel the same way Mr. Larson feels about this, and we've kicked the can down the road long enough. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And I would like to include in our narrative that we are also going to use part of this money for sidewalks and bike lanes and curbs too. I think you're capturing a bigger audience when you include those types of amenities and not just for doing a chip seal or sealing cracks. People have to see something for their money. And I think most people, a lot of people, will understand and want to improve our roads, our streets, and are willing to pay for it when they see activity, see results.
Councilor Sarvadi.
Thank you. I support the current proposal. I really appreciate the example that's in here, buying a dryer for $500. It works out to an extra $1 you would pay under this scenario. And Patricia, I don't know if you sent it to everyone, but if you would send out the IRS, that link, if you use the IRS's tool for calculating how much, you take the standard deduction, you can itemize. I was just sitting here playing with it. So a household that makes between 70 and 80,000, based on the IRS's voodoo magic of how much you would pay, a family would pay an extra $31.93 if they made 70 to 80,000, is what their tool estimates you would pay a retail sales tax from 8.7 to 8.9. So I don't know where most people would fall in Island County. I just picked a number, maybe that's too much math. Most people just want to look at big ticket things. Say, I buy a dryer and it's an extra $1. But once again, I think it's going to be surprising if people really take the time to study the numbers. It's much more equitable with the sales tax, and I'd rather pursue a plan that gets us up to speed in 8-ish years to 10 years, whatever it is, and then we start adding sidewalks, bike paths, and really getting progressive with the roads. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, Councilman.
Sure, yes. The plan that you gave us today, that was with the 0.2 of the sales tax.
Correct.
And that was to maintain our 100 miles of roadways in a certain amount of years. And I imagine if we were to cut that in half, it would cut that timetable and that plan, or double.
Yeah.
I mean, it would also kick down making the improvements to the sidewalks, the major improvements, as you said. You said that you thought, if I remember right in the presentation, that after, was it 7 or 8 years, that we would be freed up to
Correct.
maybe start working on some of those. And I think even having a plan like that and being able to say that, and again, maybe put that in a fact sheet or make that very bold statement that doing this is going to get us caught up maintenance-wise and allow us in so many years to, even if it's a little bit in the future, to make some real improvements that will really make our, quality of living here that much better. I think that that's a good plan, that I'm behind, so I think staying with our current proposal is the way to go.
Okay. Good, thank you very much. We will, nice job and a lot of hard work, thank you for that, appreciate it. We will move on then to item number C, or letter C, Forbes annexation. And I see we have Senior Planner CAC coming back, and our Development Services Director staying with us, and our city engineer. Good.
Forbes annexation, so we have an annexation request. We can get the presentation loaded up. I have a few maps. So this is the traditional first step that a property owner takes when they want to annex into the city. They send a letter, and we take a brief look at it and present it to the city council within 60 days. And you don't decide, or you don't actually annex the property at the end of the 60 days. You just make a decision to whether you want to continue on that process. And so that's where we are. And I don't know, do you have, no?
Did you put it on the network with them?
I did.
Our network went down today.
Oh.
So, shadow puppets here.
Uh-oh.
I
have
can
some of
see
these
it
maps in our
clearly in my
package.
head. Go ahead.
What's the
So
next
there-
item on the
so
agenda?
there were a couple of maps in your
Yes.
packet.
There are.
It's 3 parcels at basically the intersection of Crosby Road and Airline Way. CAC, why don't you just give them a quick thumbnail sketch of the topics that we're looking at?
Yeah, so the three things that we would consider in an annexation is, whether we're going to geographically modify or reject or accept the annexation. I think there's nothing here that actually prevents us from annexing the property. There's no detriment to us as a city, so I don't think we'll have any issues there. The second question is, what is the zoning you want to take in? This is zoned for low-density residential, designated for low-density residential, so they can be R1, R2, or R3. No, not that.
There we go.
That's not it, actually.
The map is upside down, but it's at least a map.
It's kind of-
So they're unimproved, no, it
understand.
looks like one does have improvements
It's a
on
line
it.
going to the property.
So, okay. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, there you got it.
Okay, so we're talking about there's 1, 2, and then 3 properties. So that's the extent of the properties that are being considered for annexation. You got Crosby Avenue, Airline Way. The city limits are currently, this is the West Meadows subdivision. The city limits come along here. These are the last lots in West Meadows. These lots are outside in the county, and these are the properties that want to annex in. So again, there's no real hindrance to city annexing. The zoning, they have a choice of R1, R2, or R3. I think we can kind of talk to them and see what is it that they want to do and find a zoning designation that would work for them.
There you go.
Oh, there you go, thank you. Do I have, yeah, there you go, okay. So, the third question is whether we want the property when they come in to share all the indebtedness in the city, and that's a no-brainer. We do want them to partake in all of those. Again, the low-density residential designation gives them an option of R1, R2, R3 zoning. We can chat with them, with the property owner, about which one is best. Just from a general standpoint, we would want them to do the higher density, and just because it's just a way to, as a city, whenever we can provide service, we want the higher density. That's just kind of a GMA thing, and if we can get it, that's great. So the main things are utilities, transportation, critical area, and emergency services. These are things that we kind of look at while we consider annexation. We discuss these things. They're not a hindrance to annexation, but discussion of this information provides the property owner some kind of an idea of what is involved being in the city and trying to develop the city. So this is the land use map, zoning. As you can see, there's single family, but if you have R2 or R3 zoning, I don't think it's the end of the world. Again, this is the lay of the land. Now, just wanted to show you some of the features that are around it. So here's the property, here's the existing house. This is all from the property records owned by the same property owner. I think the idea is to just try and sell the 3 lots that are along here and then retain this section. Now, if you can see, these are lowlands. We have the city's lift station is located right over here, and we have wetlands here as well. These are things that will play into any development because there's stormwater implications, there's buffer requirements that they'll have to meet. So when they come into the city, these are just things that any development will have to deal with. Some of the challenges, you can see it's a long, skinny parcel. These have frontage improvements usually that are associated with it. So that could be challenging too, based on what they're wanting to develop. They'll have to do frontage improvements along Airline Way and Crosby Avenue. That's just part of our requirements. So, and if you have, and I'll show you a map of this is from our Google Earth and Island County layers. Again, this shows the kind of wetlands that we're dealing with and the extent of them. So you can see that portions of the wetland are on the property that's being annexed. Therefore, they would have to consider critical area regulations that we have, prepare the reports, have the buffers, etc. And one of the things that I wanted to point out, and again, this is a map from Island County. Here's the parcel, here's the wetland, and they also have a stream that comes and joins all of this and takes this water out to the Puget Sound. And that, you can see the word there, it says fish, so they've designated that as a fish stream. So all of these are things that any developer or property owner would have to deal with, whether they're in the city or the county, so the rules are going to apply. And so we'll share all of that information with them as well. But it's coming to a July 9th meeting, and it's that 60-day window. Because of all of these issues, we'll probably recommend that the City Council accept the proposal and move it forward, but probably would like to go to an annexation agreement, just so that we can convey all the challenges that surround this property, so that some future developer can read an annexation agreement and go, I have to deal with all these issues, and none of it is a surprise. So we'll try and get that information. There's a lot of utility challenges as well with land slopes, and Jim, if you want to speak to that.
Okay. So where the arrow is, that's basically where our lift station is. That's their sewer. This land runs downhill to that location here. This subdivision drains into here, then the sewers pump back out. So so we'd be looking at how do is there a possibility to extend sewer services up to these areas if they were to annex in, or even at this location right here? It's pretty difficult. You wouldn't want to come in and tear your street up, and I think it's about 1,600 feet of road frontage. Is that road frontage right there? So you envision doing this, your sewer would run down the back property line here. It's going to be a cheaper route, but then I got to bring it back. I got to climb up a hill. It's just literally coming up an embankment like this. So even houses fronting this street here, we would have to consider allowing them actually street frontage from their garage to get out there. It's very steep and not a really good safe situation. Water in our water comp plan comes down Airline And it comes right to about the edge of the property, the edge of the city limits right there. It's a 16-inch water main. Our city comp plan says that we need to start taking a look at building a major transmission line along the west boundary of the city. The transmission line is between a 16 and a 24-inch line, and that would go in and all the way down into eventually tie into Fort Nugent. It creates a different pressure zone. Currently, the 16-inch water main is here to here, so they would still be left with a 16-inch water main frontage here, but we would do the cost sharing for the upsizing. So their needs would probably be an 8-inch typical water line, and our needs would be on top of that, so we could then do our cost sharing. But then you'd have your curb gutter and sidewalk along that whole 1,600 feet. Then you start looking at densities. And thinking to yourself, okay, how many houses do I got to build to break even, right? Because I can't have driveways getting out on the airline, so I've got to have an internal roadway. And so now my lot sizes start getting smaller. I need more units and those type of things. So, but that's really the developer's call. It's not our call. There's certainly access to utilities there. It's depending on if that's the way they want to go. So.
So I think our general thoughts are to allow the annexation to move forward, have an annexation agreement, continue the discussion. However, there are challenges that they have to face in developing the property. It's just the shape and the location of it just kind of puts it in the.
Councilor Ellenberg?
Yes. In order to do the annexation, it must be in the UGA.
Yes.
That whole piece of property.
Yes, it is.
There's adjoining properties in there that we proposed maybe 8 years ago to add other properties, and it got shot down with the county.
14 years ago.
14 years ago? Oh my head.
Time flies.
This
Yes.
one down here with the.
Yes, and so there, all the are we better off? Well, I don't know about us, but are the applicants better off also applying for the UGA in that area so that they have more people to share the cost of the road development, et cetera?
Our problem is we box our UJ in, even the property even though we may not go into the wetlands, it would make more sense to work with a larger piece of property rather than a smaller, narrow piece of property. So the farm is split up. Part of it, a little slice of it is in the UJ, the rest of it isn't. So it's really not an option at this time. It's going to be a long, laborious process of trying to do it. I think from the planning point of view is we're going to have the Cognizant, and then to the south there we have the Hillcrest subdivision that's approached us before about water issues. We've got that property over here. So there's a lot of future growth area. I think we have to focus on what we can do in the short term. That's why staffing's kind of doing some kind of analysis on it. The density makes sense. Certainly if they annex in, we would like it to be a project that's going to work. But since you don't have the property to the west, or you don't have the property to the south, Kitty Corner, or to the south of it to really consider, you're just limited.
And where it's trying to bring that in the UGA is out of the question right now too. I think we already had a challenge on that with the county we lost.
You're not able to make the case, or rather the property owner wouldn't be able to make the case right now to do it at this time. I mean, certainly it's an option that we could inform them of to broaden their range of possibilities. But as either CAC or Blaine said, it's a longer term proposition, and so if they have an immediate need, proceeding the annexation makes sense, get it into the city, and then so it can be positioned for development at urban intensities. And then maybe they do that with an eye towards bringing in property later on. And so then the smart thing for them to do, Mr. Alberg, would be to think about how they develop the piece that can come into the city now so that it can be added on to with the adjacent piece. And so you just want to do careful site planning at that point.
Yeah, where's your wetland? So it's lying on there, I mean, not all that other property. Yeah, so there's some of that property that's not in the UGA, but a lot of it's in the wetlands area, so.
Just to add, strategic overlay for these properties being considered in the UGA. If you look at the park plan and the long-term layout that we just talked about a couple of items ago, the long-term plan talks about trying to extend the trail system around the city through here to connect these wetlands. These wetlands would be some of the amenities. So if you had them in the city and if you had development proposals, then you have an opportunity to have those trails extended as well. So just a layer of consideration.
So we'll be there on July 9th with this formalized agenda bill for it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to letter D, Marina Rural County Economic Development Grant Application. Have our Harbor Master join us, Mr. Sutliff.
Mayor, council members. Tonight I'm here to talk to you about the Rural County Economic Development Grant. The information is in your packet. We do plan to bring this to you July 9th, so I've reviewed the material. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have right now.
We're going to try to forego the presentation to help you with your timing on your agenda, so.
Yeah, just so you, in a quick summary, we expanded the scope. We were originally going to do a marina related to a boat launch, and the boat launch didn't really qualify, and then we did get some additional grant funding through the budget process of $400,000. That gives us some flexibility, and so we had to make a decision to go to the county at a expanded level in the interest of time, and so we're coming back and updating you as a, sorry, we kind of had to jump ahead, but we wanted to keep you in the loop, and so the presentation's in your packet on the expanded, which is coming to a full-service marina, which I think really has a lot of economic value for the city.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I looked at this and it was like, wow, this is new. I'm glad I got to see it before we got to talk about it. But looking at page 125 of our packet, and we were talking about the project funding, the total is going to be about $1.1 million, and we're looking at the $630,000 and then $400,000 from the state of Washington, with $70,000 from the city of Oak Harbor. Now, if I understand this correctly, that's just for acquisition. That's not for future development costs and things like that. I understand that initially we're going to get some rental income from there, but it's going to take at least 1 to 2 new employees, and then there's going to need to be a business plan developed, and then a business developed from that plan. And so where is the funding coming for that was my first question. And the second question is, we still need to get that boat ramp for that boat launch, right? And that's not included in this.
So the 1.1 is our estimate for acquisition and redevelopment in order to make it up to the current standards. So it's not as bleak a picture as what it might have appeared for. Sorry if that wasn't quite clear.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot the second.
And the second one as well, because we originally put in the grant request for the boat launch.
Yes.
And so we still need that.
We do. And so we're trying to figure out right now what our range of possibilities are. This is the very definition of a fluid situation, and I apologize for that.
Moving target.
Yes.
Yeah, so the numbers are very fluid.
Okay.
Yes. And we are trying to figure out right now what requirements the state of Washington may have for us with the use of the $400,000. In fact, we participated in a teleconference last Friday afternoon with representatives from DNR on that topic. That's an evolving picture as well. And so what we've tried to do here was to shoot to the outside. And it's entirely possible that you could achieve acquisition, some redevelopment, and the boat launcher inside of this number. But it's not yet clear to us what strings might be associated with the 400,000. Once we understand that better, we can answer your questions better.
Okay. Thank you.
More to come.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other? We will bring you more information, believe me. Okay. We will move on then to Public Works. Item number A, Clean Water Facility Performance Update, nitrogen removal data. we have our Public Works Director, Kathy Rose, Engineer Brett Arvidsson joining us. Welcome.
Good evening. We're going to talk a little about nutrients in the Puget Sound, and our current treatment plant performance is very well tied to this. I've talked in the past that we have some changing water quality standards coming on, and we're actually very well positioned for it, but I think we didn't understand that because where we're going with the clean water facility and possible issues driven by this. Well, thank you. Just to put it in background, of course, we all know we put our clean water facility in operation in November. Our clean water facility is a nutrient facility, and it's doing a very good job. It was actually pretty present in January. I said December here, but it's actually January. We received a notice from the Department of Ecology about placing new effluent limits on nutrient loading in the Puget Sound. So I handed out the email that we got that talks about that. And that's a big deal. It's an esoteric subject, so I'm sorry if I sound like science class, but it is also a very costly subject, as we know. So anyway, we've always talked about new water quality standards in the Puget Sound where they're here. They are in the process of developing regulations to limit nutrient loads, but basically nitrogen, into the Puget Sound. Well, why is this important? Why does it affect the city? And I think that's where we want to go with this. I'm going to step back and talk about wastewater 101. This is called the Clean Water Act. The Clean Water Act was signed into law by Richard Nixon. It's almost 50 years old now. It established minimum standards for wastewater treatment, what we call secondary treatment, and 85% removal of pollutants. It also established a process for evaluation of all water bodies and identification of water quality impaired waters. That's what we call the 303D list. That's nomenclature. Once a water body is classified as impaired, the state must take actions to improve water quality, and they have to set regulations and process. And you'll hear us talk about the TMDL, total maximum daily load. They start capping pollutant loads into the water body. Clean Water Act does allow for third-party lawsuits to enforce this provision. So if the regulatory body in the state, like DOE or DEQ in Oregon, do not do their job, people can come in and sue. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that going on right now. Sorry. Take just a second here. Now, the water quality in Puget Sound, they do periodic studies for the 303D list. They are required to do a study every 6 years. And the Puget Sound has been identified as not meeting the dissolved oxygen standards. You can talk about DO. The dissolved oxygen is an indicator of aquatic health because most use DO to breathe. So fish have gills and other aquatic life. So DO is an indicator of health. So if the DO is low, you start selecting for other species that, like carp or something like that like that environment better. Mussels like it. But many species do not thrive under this, and sometimes the smallest algae or smallest zooplankton will impact the orcas at the end of the food chain. So that's where striving is. We're starting to see the results at the higher aquatic levels, and so that's where it's become an issue. Nutrients, and we're mostly talking about nitrogen, promote algae growth. So the algae blooms. So algae is a plant, so it actually produces oxygen, but when it dies, it sinks to the bottom and decomposes and creates an oxygen demand. So what we're seeing is excessive algae in the algae blooms, and it's creating an oxygen demand. Saratoga Passage and Penn Cove are considered some of the most impaired water bodies in the Sound. And let's bring up my, that's the other one. So this is a map of the Puget Sound. The DOE had started studying this problem. They use a large computer model to model these results, and it's a supercomputer they run over in Richland, very expensive, and they've been working now for 3 or 4 years. Just expand, oops. So the Puget Sound itself, you see these red areas, those are mostly inlets, but this is the area we know and love. And you see it's very red. That's the number exceedance days. So the red indicators are that we're not meeting the dissolved oxygen standards the state says over 120 days a year. Maybe go back. I'll come back to this in a few minutes, but this is the basis of where we're starting. So you can see Penn Cove, Oak Harbor, Crescent Harbor are all very red. Moving on. Okay. So like I say, DOE has been studying this for a long time. Many factors influence DOE. It's not only loading, but tidal effects, water effects, water coming out from streams. And like I say, they use a sophisticated model to do that. And oftentimes here, you talk about the model results compared to actuality, and sometimes they can get disjointed. But these models are used in all these decisions. And when we're talking about the Puget Sound, this happening elsewhere in the country, Chesapeake Bay, Long Island Harbor in New York. San Francisco Bay is looking at it. The Great Lakes used a similar system, but they're a freshwater lake, they're not an estuary. But it is a common way to go with it, and you get the PhDs talking about their models, but they are driving a lot of decisions on how we handle water quality in this country. I was involved in some of the earliest TMDLs in the Tualatin River in the mid-'80s, and we made tens of $1 million decisions based on a spreadsheet. So this is actually a vast improvement, but it's one of those things that it's interesting to talk about. But what's coming down is there is a feeling that DOE is not moving fast enough. So there's an environmental group called Northwest Environmental Associates and Advocates. I have some personal experience with them. They petition and then have filed suit with the DOE to impose immediate standards into the Puget Sound. They want basically nutrient standards set and phosphorus standards set. In your packet there, I did give you some of their handouts. That's their web pages. And they are very experienced in these type of lawsuits, and it's going to go on for a while. So this issue is in play, and it's going to be in play in the courts for several years. And it's eventually, we're talking billions of dollars of impact to the dischargers in the Puget Sound, however it plays out. And so DOE has denied the petition and disputes the validity of their request, and it's been taken to court. It was filed in February. But as an interim, DOE is implementing nutrient standards in the Puget Sound. They're basically capping everybody at their existing loads, saying no more until we find it. As once they go through this TMDL process, then they will come back and start dealing with individual dischargers. Now, the West Whidbey Basin, which is the Saratoga Passage and Penn Cove and Crescent Harbor, is, like I say, so they're probably going to be hitting that one early and hitting it with more stringent standards because there's a lot more impact. And so they're talking about doing it. They'll probably do some kind of Puget Sound-wide system, and then very area-specific areas. So they did impose those caps, and it's going to have interesting standards because those caps basically attack growth. So yeah, you can continue like you are today, but as soon as you start to grow your flow, you have to start dealing with these new standards. The process they'll take when right now they're not sure how they can change in their permits and they issue general permits. There's various ways to do that, or be other ways. The city's discharging the Puget Sound will make major investments in nutrient removal. There's going to be major technology upgrades for every city in the Sound, except us. Our current facility meets the proposed nutrient standards. That's a function of our membrane system. We did it for largely economic reasons, but we're coming out way ahead in this process. So as dire as this sound, we can kind of go home tonight saying, okay, we're good. In the letter that we sent out, they did recognize that facilities meet the proposed standards will be judged on, not what we're doing now, but what we should be doing, and so we are in a position to pass this one by.
Wait, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Say that again.
The new standards coming out, we already meet
We
requirements.
meet that, but we are kind of above the curve. So how do we get that margin, that credit in there?
I'll talk about that.
Okay, all right.
So this is our plant performance. Now I'm going to start talking about science talk here, but this is critical to us. This is the nitrogen we see coming into our plant is ammonia. Ammonia is functionally urine. We see about 30 to 35 milligrams per liter ammonia in our inflow. Ammonia does several things. One, to decompose ammonia down to nitrate, takes oxygen. So if you put that ammonia into the water body, you're creating an oxygen demand. Let's call it ammonia. Number two is once it gets to be nitrate, that nitrate becomes the nutrients for the algae. So you create more oxygen demand. So we're coming in. First good news is our ammonia in our plant is essentially zero. So that oxygen demand is going away. And this is advanced treatment. Most treatment plants don't do this. Number two is we're putting out nitrates. So you have that 30 milligrams per liter of ammonia. You would think you get 30 milligrams per liter of nitrate from the chemistry. The fact is we're putting out right now about in the 4 range. That's a process we call denitrification. It's a biological process. And when they come to impose the nutrient standards on the Puget Sound, that red line there is about 8 milligrams per liter. So that's what we would expect them to impose on us as a cap eventually. As you notice, we're operating way below that.
At 4.
At 4. Now, this has a lot of benefits to us, depending on how they impose the standards, if they do some asphalt or not, but we have room for growth. So what does this mean? Well, one, we're not going to be investing in new technology. We already have it. Nobody's going to come back later and say you have to do this under a time frame where you can't grow. Number two, yeah, say our ability to grow is there because we can do it. And hopefully we can take this trend forward and move it forward. If they do a cap on us, we still have a lot of room. We also have the ability to negotiate a little bit higher when that comes down the road at us, which will probably be 4 or 5 years, depending on what things happen in Navy. I think the big issue is we can accommodate Navy flows without a blink of our eyes.
I'm going to save my question,
Yeah.
excuse me. Because I want to come back to that one for a
Yeah.
second.
So this will be it is a major discussion with the Navy because the Navy's assumptions on what they could build out at the seaplane base have just changed drastically because the standards we have in Puget Sound is applied to them also.
It is applied to federal?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's applied to what we call 402D process in more nomenclature. Also, another interesting thing is in the business we have what called water quality trading. So we have good performance. We could actually other jurisdictions may decide that it's easier to buy improved performance from us and rather than make that expansion. So this is actually done a lot in the East Coast and in the Chesapeake and in the Long Island Sound. And so there may be some marketability of our treatment plant. You know, it's not huge money, but it is something that could be a cost offset in the future. So again, we're ahead of the game. We're in a good place, and there's opportunities with this coming up. Can you put that slide back up again? I think that, the thing I'm most proud of, I think we all should be proud about it, is, we're seeing this is based on a model run that they took conditions in 2006. And, again, it's a computer model, it's been calibrated, you can argue with whether it's real or not. But they also, the model made an assumption that they came back and say every treatment plant in the Puget Sound implemented BNR to see what the difference was. And you can notice a vast change in the color. So the models are showing what improvements are to the water quality. Now, what I want to look at is you look at where we are today, we're 2/3 of the way there now. From here to here, we've made that big step already because this impact is very locally driven. Everett has some impact on it, but it's very small. Most of the impact is from us, and we've taken out 2/3 of that load last November. So to me, that's something we should be taking home to our families and saying, as a professional, I knew we were having good impacts. I didn't realize how drastic this was. And this to me is something we should be talking to our public about because we have done something good for the environment. Again, from here to here is a lot. And like I say, I hope this gets out to people and they can see it. Okay, Tim, I should bring it back. And so, like I say, we have done more than our share, and it's something that we should be, something to be proud of as a city. And, some of the awards we're seeing and some of the impacts we're seeing right now is from that. One other thing that's been kind of floating around, we're hearing some back buzz on the social media and stuff about it, is about the shellfish restrictions in Oak Harbor. They're saying, well, if our plant's so good, how come we have a shellfish restriction? There's always been a shellfish restriction in Oak Harbor. It's not only the wastewater treatment, but it's from other issues. Those people that were involved with the siting of our treatment plant, when we're talking about the Crescent Harbor alternative, one of the reasons we didn't go over there is because we couldn't discharge into Crescent Harbor because of shellfish. And the reason we came over here is because that restriction would never occur. So that restriction has always been there. And even if we weren't there, there'd still be a restriction because you're tying it back to urban uses, marina. So the harbor itself would never, and that's why we didn't have to pay shellfish mitigation when we built our outfall. So we're hearing this buzz, but that's actually good for us, And our outfall is being evaluated by the Fish and Wildlife for mixed zone performance this year. And we're actually getting good performance out of it, but it's not, they won 1,001, which is an extremely high number, and we're at 350, and most places are 100. So the mixing zone, while it's good, is probably not going to change that restriction. Like I say, they're more driven by other issues. Tim, could you put up the... This kind of shows the shellfish restrictions there. You can see here. You can see where there, Crescent Harbor, where the outfall is. Coopville. There's actually a small treatment plant at Penn Cove. So every sewer outfall in the state has this restriction. This restriction actually applies all the way from Everett all the way down to Tacoma. So again, there is some buzz about that, but that was actually part of our decision way back when. And, you know, I talk about all the news. This picture's been getting a lot, and I don't like being the poster child, but I got to hold the bottles. When you come back to what we're talking about here, this is the most visual we have. Clean water, dirty water, right there. And that's the basic result of what we're doing, and anybody can understand that. And so, I do feel proud of what we're doing here, and I think, you know, we've built a future, and we've done, you know, we have opportunities with that future in the future.
So just to remind people, the one that we're looking at on the left, the Clearwater, is our current plant.
Okay.
The other is the wastewater lagoons on the seaplane base.
Questions?
Councilor Watson?
Yes, just a couple real quick. First, the red on the map,
Uh-huh.
how quickly does that get better?
That's
I know you can't quantify it.
Yeah, I would say it's going to get better over years because it's growing it's changing the biology in the bay, and so, and also Penn Cove itself is just because it's an intertidal zone, it never really flushes very well, so it takes a lot longer to do that. You know, so are we going to see?
What about Oak Harbor?
Oak Harbor is Oak Harbor, and I think we get enough flushing there, but actually in some ways we're diluting our water, you know. So it's, you know, it's kind of one of those things where I can look at the model and say, yeah, we're making improvements. Are you going to go out there and see the water clearer? You know, it really depends on what day you're there. You know, but at the same token, I do feel that if we can get at this whole system, you will see benefits. And that's part of the modeling. Is we set this water quality standard as this fixed number they take out of, you know, out of a textbook. Was that the same number? Was, you know, Joseph Whitby, where rode around the island, didn't have a DO meter with it, you know. And so, but it does give you some management and goal to head for.
And then my second question, away from the water into the air, how are we doing with the smell?
We started the dryer last week, and unfortunately today we had to step back, but we were actually running the dryer 6 days, and we were getting good results, and we were getting, you know, we weren't having bad odors, but we're still getting, so we made some adjustments today to fix the ventilation system, and it was the wrong adjustment, so we're starting again tomorrow.
So is this just a matter of you guys figuring out the right way to use the equipment? I mean, can you break it down in a simple way?
Well, it's tied back to the ventilation system. We actually have the dryer itself very well sealed, but we have a bunch of ducts and fans that pull all the air off and send it over to the odor control. And we have some situations because you know, it's like we're balancing the system now to make sure we're sucking out of it. So we're trying to get the system balanced. Well, air was going in rather than coming out, and you know, so Carroll and Hoffman had a long call this afternoon on it because I went out this morning and said, "What's going on here? This is bad." So today was a bad day. We're getting back to where we were. Then we're going to track it down and have no odors. We ran it all last week without a big problem. There was a little smell. You could smell a little bit, but it wasn't overpowering. Today was overpowering.
Okay.
Councilor Servadius?
Just real quick, I want to say thank you. That's a great message. Mayor, Blaine, anyone who's listening. Great graphics for social media. Even more formal one where you just have two cylinders sitting next to each other with a clean backdrop. That's about as powerful of messages you can put out on social media as there is to say before and after. And I would highly suggest we do that. And also the nutrient reduction program or project, just those two, that's another great graphic to put out there. Here's where we were, here's what our changes have done or could amount to. The question I had was, you said the last part of your, one of those slides, that other municipalities might be interested in purchasing improved performance. How does that?
It's what called water quality trading, and it's kind of bizarre, but what happens is you may have a community that's so small that it's a big issue to them. They can actually buy our performance, buy some of our excess, and rather than do their own improvement. And it's,
So they're, sorry, we're not actually treating for them, they're buying our improved,
they're buying
Like
credits from
credit?
us, they're buying credits from us from that. And
It's like a carbon tax, except
Yeah.
with the
carbon
water.
tax
so
is a
does the
good
money
example.
go? Do we get it, or does this,
So what they do is they set up a bank every year, and they say, okay, and they kind of say, well, you have these credits available, and you still have a whole regulatory framework behind it, and it's not, it's not simple. Then people come in and say, well, I can bid on that credit, so we can say, yeah, we have, X number of pounds available for you and to sell, and somebody can come in and say, rather than build my facilities, I'll buy those credits.
So, but as I understand it, the state they're in the very beginning discussion of setting up that bank. It's not anything we can do today, but they are working towards that.
And like I said, and I've gone to several DOE, and they brought several states in there doing it right now. There's several in Chesapeake, Connecticut's doing it. So to me, it's a real thing, and it's something we want to pay attention to, because there'll be people that are going to be, I think, it's also an advantage to a lot of smaller communities that just can't meet the investment.
Councilor Armour.
Well, that's kind of related to the question that I want to talk to you too about water quality trading or the credits.
Yeah.
It's an asset for this plant.
Yes.
And we should look at it as part of our bank. We have fixed interest rates for the life of this as it's currently built and funded at pretty close to 2% fixed as the cost value of the dollar keeps going down. So we're paying off that loan with cheaper dollars at that very low interest rate. It makes sense.
Yeah.
That's part of the asset. Now, when we sell those credits, if we sell those credits, then that's basically reducing our future ability to add capacity to that.
No, it's taking advantage of our current performance.
Well, but if our nutrient loads keep going up by our volumes, as we add new sewer
That's
hookups.
where it becomes interesting, because I'm not sure if they're going to do a mass load allocation or a concentration load allocation, and that's where, and also we can negotiate some of that into the future. And it's also an annual thing, so we may say, yeah, for 10 years we have this excess capacity. Also, we have this point we stop selling it.
So, but I'm just looking at that and that level 4 versus if they set that standard at level 8.
Yeah.
That it's something we should really protect for the benefit of our ratepayers here. And when we look at the monthly sewer bills for other communities that have modern treatment systems, and I'm going to use Blaine for example, when I looked at it like 5 years ago, they were paying like $105 a month at that time, 5 years ago. I don't know what they're paying today, but the cost of treatment is going up. We just happen, mostly by luck, and keep moving up the hill or up the mountain. We just kept going, and on the long term, this is a good move for this community. And you can look at the numbers any way you want. It sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But by the time you parcel out the items that we added in there in addition to that treatment plant, I think at least I can walk away from this council at the end of this year feeling like we actually did something that's going to benefit this community for 40, maybe longer, 40 years, and benefit the Navy too, possibly.
And I think that's what I hoped with my last slide is we have gone a long ways, and I think we've been smart about it. In terms of your comment on the regulatory side, is we need, when our permit cycles come up, we need to be sure to understand this and negotiate. We can negotiate those kind of limits and make sure that we buy it. And that's why we want, this is an esoteric model. A lot of people don't understand it. but you can play it very well. I personally was involved in the Willamette River. We did temperature TM deals where we had thermal limits going out of the treatment plant. They're running a very sophisticated model like this. When it came down to actually applying, the model was kind of cool, when they came down to applying the loads, how they did the loads, we went back into the model and said, and got, partially just because we were loud and noisy, they came in and said, we actually got more load by playing that model. So we need to be cognizant of when that comes up, of how we do that, because I was able to get 50% more load than they originally booked.
And most of the other communities bordering Puget Sound are going to be playing catch up. And just a few days ago, I was speaking with an engineer at a large community in this Puget Sound area who is involved in their treatment facility. And I think I understand this correctly. I'm not going to use the name of the person or the community, but it's a major community that because of their nutrient loading and the type of system that they are using, it will restrict their ability to hook up additional sewer connections by 50%. It's a huge number based on this memo, based on what DOE is just now doing.
Yeah,
That's going to affect a lot of people.
Yeah, because I've seen it elsewhere. I was dealt with phosphorus in the 12 River, and we got hit with a 2-year. Nowadays, they're more or less. We got hit with a 2-year requirement. We spent $30 million in 1987 in getting that plant up so we can meet the standards, or else we were hitting the building then. And so, it's like I say, it's esoteric, but it has a lot of impact.
Well, I'm going to say nice work, good timing, and a lot of effort.
As a
so
community, we have to.
Timing was everything.
Yeah.
I'd rather be lucky than good.
So in the interest of time, going to try to move this along a little bit. Thank you very much, Fred. Let's get on to item number B, under Public Works, Solid Waste Management, interlocal agreement with Island County. Okay, we have Mr. Beebe joining us. Beebe?
Lucky you. So, I don't know, I've not been here before, so I'm not quite sure how to work all these gadgets. At the end of this year, our interlocal contract with Island County expires, and so we need to re-sign the contract with them as of January. And so what this is a 6-year contract with them and they provide services for us, which is it's a solid waste management plan similar to what we have for our streets, water, and those types of things. And they have to provide a plan that goes to the state that allows them to perform under certain guidelines, and they have to do things. They have to do things like moderate risk plan. They have to have a moderate risk plan. They have to have a transportation plan for the trucks that go to the dump sites. It requires each county, in cooperation with the various cities located within the county, to prepare the coordinated comprehensive solid waste management plan. Cities may prepare their own comprehensive solid waste management plan for integration with the county plan, enter into an agreement with the county in which the city will participate in preparing a joint county-city plan, or authorize the county to prepare a plan for the city's solid waste management for inclusion in the county's plan. Now, a lot of that it gets confusing, but basically what it means is that we participate with the county and develop the moderate plan. I'm part of the SWAC committee. We sit down, we discuss all the things about how to get rid of the moderate waste plan, if there was a disaster, how to take care of the solid waste. You have to have a plan for that. And we choose the one that is where we enter into an agreement with Island County and the city participates in it.
And we've done that for many, many
Many,
years.
many years.
Prior to my time here.
Okay, so the comprehensive solid waste must consider and plan for the sorts, separation of recyclables. So the county's got to have a recycling plan. So you got to come in and try to reduce the amount of garbage as much as we can by recycling. And so the plan you have to develop within that, you have to take care of recyclables, the collection of source separation materials, handling and proper preparation of materials for reuse and recycling, handling of proper preparation of organic materials and composting for anaerobic digestion, and the handling of proper disposal of non-recyclable waste. So when you're pulling up to the scales, first before that you have to go through the recycling center, get rid of all your recyclables. Then you go through the scales, and then you got to go to, there's a hazardous waste, metal, and all of that you have to prepare to get rid of your garbage prior to dumping it in the transfer station. And on the city side, we do it even before that. We do it at the curb. So the average driver that goes through across the scales has to go through what I just mentioned. The city residents, we provide the recycling at the curb. And then we allow for, because we're part of the plan with Island County, people can take their hazardous waste to the local satellite stations and drop off their fluorescent bulbs, paints, chemicals, those types of things. You can drop off at those satellite stations or Island County. And that's what the interlocal agreement allows us to do, is that we don't have to have a plan for these things on our own. We partner up with the county, and they basically run the majority of these programs for the city to be able to use. And any of our citizens can use these at no cost to them, the hazardous waste stuff. So other things that the comprehensive plan does is it has methods to address the following, and that's construction and demolition debris. So if they tear down a building, or house waste type things, when you're building a house, residing it, and you got to take it, those hard to handle type waste, it can go there. Organic materials, yard waste, debris, food waste, those types of things. The plan has to cover those types of things. Recoverable paper products, basically recycling, metals, glass, plastics, and recycling, and waste reduction strategies. And some of that is going to start to change a little bit with the problem that we're seeing with recycling, but long-term wise, we don't really know how those recycling things are going to pan out. Questions?
Yeah. So this agreement is between the county, Langley, Coopville, and Oak Harbor. We all participate under that. The Navy prepares their own plan for inclusion in the county's plan. But it's really not cost effective for us to have to address all of those items and prepare our own comprehensive solid waste management plan to include in the counties. It's more cost effective for us to partner with them.
Years ago, we looked at having a transfer station of our own, and if you look at having a hazardous waste center for people to bring it to, having a comp plan, we would have to have our own comp plan. It just does not, those types of things don't pan out for a city our size to do. So we cooperate with the county, same with Langley, same with Coopville. We partner up with the county, and they take care of our garbage.
And then the county contracts for the long haul from the transfer station in Coopville to wherever they contract with for landfilling of the solid waste. This will come forward at the July meeting for consideration. And then shortly after that, we will be coming forward with the updated comprehensive coordinated comprehensive solid waste management plan for Island County.
Councilor Survey?
I thought I saw, I don't know, it was an email online or something from Island County. They were actually doing a form of outreach with regards to the recycling and solid waste fees and what that might mean to Island County residents. And I don't know, I know we've had that discussion. Are we any further down the path? Are we going to do any kind of an outreach to the citizens of Oak Harbor to inform them and maybe give them a say?
So, can I steal some of your
Go
thunder,
for it.
Blaine? Okay, thank you. We were recently notified that Island County is going to have a rate study done because they're experiencing increased costs in recycling as well as the city. When we put together our budget and when we had HDR do the initial rate analysis, we were told by Island County that they didn't anticipate any rate increases. At your last council meeting, you approved an amendment to HDR's contract to look at what the increase in recycling costs mean. We've talked internally, we're going to hold off on HDR moving forward with that analysis until we have an idea of what the tipping fees from Island County are going to be adjusted to as well. So we look at it at one time. And then we can, once we have those numbers in, I think we can do some outreach as to how we want to move forward. And I do know that the county is also looking for input into their draft comp plan, updated comp plan.
And that was on Woodby News Times too, just saw where they're asking for input on their comp plan and.
Yeah.
I knew I saw it somewhere.
Yeah, and if we stop doing the recycled bins that we do now, then we would be similar to the county, and we would look at areas for people to drop them off. And so we would still want to do recycling as much as possible, so.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, thank you, Steve. Kathy? We will move on to administration. Windjammer grand opening featuring the splash park. Final event notes for June 29th. Lisa
All right.
Felix?
Yeah, Lisa
Okay.
Felix is gonna join me here because she's really helped with this process and give this presentation. I'm gonna try to go through fairly quickly and stop us if you have any questions here. So just kind of giving you the latest scoop here. Of course, you're aware of the Shipwreck Shores Splash Park, so we have a nice commemoration of that, and we have the plaque to the class that the mayor delivered today.
delivered that
We
today,
have some banners
yes.
going out. We have our advertisements, Facebook via school district outlets, Libby News and Libby Times. So these are some of the flyers that we have around. So we're really trying to get the word out on that. For staff, came up with this really good idea and came up with this logo in-house here to identify staff that are participating in the grand opening. So 7 councilors and the mayor. I don't think we have our county commissioners weren't on board yet to attend, but certainly one of the good ones, Snow Isle Library Executive Director is committed, and probably will get her in the speech lineup. So. Interpretive Center is not open yet. We're gonna have a banner on that coming in 2020. We'll use that as kind of our volunteer headquarters where we keep supplies and refreshments for volunteers. So, the time frame here, 10 o'clock is Bailey's. I was told it shouldn't go the whole time. We'll do our big opening on 10:30, and then 11 o'clock ribbon cutting and getting wet. Navy Funk Band is committed. Marty Mullins Band is committed. Snow Isle Library will do their grand opening with their story walk at 1400, and then throughout that time, while supplies last, we'll give out our freebies, and then also have mermaids and balloons and those pirate booty and treasures and chests and prizes all there. So a lot of fun for family and children. So kind of the logistics here. Fences will start coming down probably on Tuesday. Everything's subject to a little bit of time there, but that's what we anticipate. Our idea is to rope off the candle cone around the whole splash park area and then make that opening as part of the opening. ceremonies. And then caution tape will be, we're just having unique tape done, so people will, if they come, once the fences start coming down on Tuesday, people will start working on that area. It won't be turned on yet, won't be turned on until 11 o'clock on Saturday, but we'll just kind of advertise the grand opening there. And then here's the logistics of the area that's roped off. You can kind of see the library story trail, dignitary speeches up to the front. You got the plaza area, and then kind of the plant is more of a blow up. And then also we have the Buccaneers. And there's the band against right in front of the Interpretive Center. Porta potties important over there by the gate, and the Smelly Center for the what we just talked about there, the dryer area, and then we have utilizing the plaza area. So, and then the booths are going to be right against the grass there, dignitaries right there, and then to your left is the park. Looking at some, we have that big old command center. We're looking at maybe something around that too, to make it look a little bit better there. So, nice area view, nice area view. The flag area is right where it's written right there, a little bit off to the side there. That'll be part of the ceremony. You can see the booths and the bands in that order. So, and then here's some more views, area views of the project, the pavilion. So we're going to focus on everything in the middle, but certainly people are welcome to walk around. It's really coming along. A lot of asphalt there now. They pretty much have all. There'll be some small area in this area that is just really fresh grass that'll probably have fence around it. So just because it's fresh grass, where we're going to put the booths and everything, that's more mature grass, so we're okay with walking on that area. So, and then we have a huge amount of sod area. So if people want to play around in that area, certainly for the 4th of July, it's much more mature. And what they did too, they had some leftover sod. There's a key area in the splash park. That right there, that mound there, that they put sod in there too, because it's just really close to it. So it just really made sense to have people are going to be utilizing. So by putting sod in it, people can sit in it right now. So it's a good advantage there. And then any questions?
Questions?
Sounds fun.
Sounds like a party. Okay. Okay, we'll go to item number B, City Administrator Report.
I can do the quick version and just take questions or go through it. You want the quick version? All right,
Yeah.
any questions?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any
Councilor.
questions, but I highlighted 3 things I just wanted to bring to people's attention. One of them, when you released your report earlier in the month, Mayor, you talked about projects that are underway for residential construction, and I just wanted to highlight that there are 9 residential projects under review currently, representing approximately 520 units. I think that's huge. It doesn't fix all of our housing problems, but it's on the way. We didn't get to where we are with the need for housing overnight. We're not going to fix it overnight, but these numbers are very encouraging. The second was I wanted to give a shout out to Island County and thank them for the landfill waiver of the tipping fees as we did that cleanup. And that was 2 20-yard dumpster loads that they said, hey, we understand the importance of what's going on here, and they gave us that waiver. So I wanted to say I appreciate that as well. I thought I had 3 things. The other was a question. I'll talk to you about that offline.
Just as an FYI, I'll just focus on that one's a key one. They've given us an additional 4 20-yard loads, and so we are extending to private property owners to help them with their cleanup.
So we'll have a total of 6 when, by the time we think we've got 4 additional for private property.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, it really is.
So we
Yeah.
have 3 property owners we're extending some free pickup and disposal for, so that's really big and helps in a lot of ways to the private property owners.
Your report had a lot of great things in it. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I just wanted to mention those 2 in particular.
Thank you. That's great. Any other input or questions about the city administrator report? Okay. Any other business to discuss? Input, questions? Well, then why don't we adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting is adjourned, 7:24.